So we tend to live in a state of sleep, of wakeful sleep. We have open eyes, but we're actually sleeping. This, like any other path, is subject to the killer of spiritual awakening. The killer of spiritual awakening is self-forgetfulness, is forgetfulness in general. And self-remembrance, remembrance is the way to get somewhere. Because as remembrance is the way to get somewhere, forgetting is the way to lose the path, even though we may think we're in a path. And what is it that creates forgetfulness? Is habit. Habit. Anything that becomes habitual in a negative sense puts us asleep and doesn't allow us to have that sense of wonder, of wakefulness, of curiosity. So everything we take for granted, just because it's there, because we're accustomed to it, we kind of puts us asleep. So we tend to live in a state of sleep, of wakeful sleep. We have open eyes, but we're actually sleeping. Even when we're doing a spiritual path, we can fall asleep. And even by following the practices very rigidly, we can still be sleeping. If we don't have this constant shocks that tend to awake us. This is why a group and a group facilitator can help. Because a group is a system where everybody wakes each other up. Because one person can fall asleep, two people can fall asleep, but in the group, there'll always be someone who's going to tend to be awake and watch the fire. You know, when you're like camping out, someone stays to protect the group, to keep the alertness. So the first practices of Tao of communication are exercises, and exercises that are meant to keep your alertness awake throughout the day, throughout the week. Now, in order to master the mind, this is what we discussed last week, that in the discussion between Krishna and Arjuna, his disciple, replied, look, it seems impossible to me to master the mind. The mind is restless, it's rebellious, it has a life on its own. It's like worse than trying to master the wind. And Krishna says, indeed, it is difficult to master the mind, but it is possible through two ingredients combined. Okay, you need both. Just like water is made of hydrogen and oxygen. Well, spiritual practice needs knowledge and practice. So Krishna says, by constant practice, by daily practice, by repetition, and by cultivating knowledge and thereby detachment, detachment is a perspective, that something that is between you and your experience that makes you see things with the lens of knowledge. Seeing things through the lens of knowledge, I'm speaking of true spiritual knowledge, eternal knowledge, the ancient wisdom of all times that comes from other dimensions even, that comes from the real, that is where we actually really all come from and go back to. Well, that transcendental knowledge has the power to unglue us from our identification with anything less than what we really are. Because we're asleep, we're embodied, we identify with our body, with our name, with everything, all of the attributes of our being, and we are attached to these things, even though one day, willing or not, we're going to have to let them go. So the whole training of yoga is to learn to disconnect from this very powerful identification, and so that we can use this body, this mind, these emotions in service of the reason we took birth in the first place. Instead of them having a life on their own and leading us left, right, up and down, regardless and despite of what our true desire is. And you all expressed what your true desire is today in one form. I'm not assuming this is the most important, but today you each gave one element that is an ingredient of what you're looking for. So in order to get there, you need to develop self-mastery. And in order to develop self-mastery, you need to learn something called sadhana. In Sanskrit, it's called sadhana. It's called in many other ways in all cultures, but I like the Sanskrit word because it has two meanings. One is known. Everyone knows who does yoga, that sadhana means your daily practice. But few people know that there's an esoteric meaning to the word sadhana because Sanskrit has many meanings, and it is the means to reach the end, the goal. Sadhana, that is daily practice, is the methodology to reach a goal in your inner pursuit. So every day, starting tomorrow, you can start introducing in your life or improving in your life if you're doing it already, or understanding more what and why you're doing what you're doing, or maybe improving if you already have a sadhana practice by listening tonight, wherever you are, to this lesson, you may improve your understanding of possible ways of how you can do your sadhana. So sadhana is daily practice, and it means setting aside. And to this, all those who are new to this lesson should listen very carefully. It means setting aside on a daily basis a minimum amount of time of your choosing that you can spend with what I like to call the most important person of your life, and that is yourself. We often spend lots of time with lots of people, and our whole life is about relationships because we're social beings. And most of the time, this confuses us and leads us astray from our real purpose. As a matter of fact, even in the Christian precept, it says, love thy neighbor as thyself. As thyself. So you need to learn to love yourself first if you want to really learn what it means to love someone else. A person who is not a healthy egotist, it is said in one of the books that we will share with you starting tomorrow, called Strategy of Inner Development. In one of the chapters, it says, only a healthy egotist can be a true altruist. So you need to learn to give yourself time and give yourself attention. This alone, done consistently, will create a compounding effect of energizing your intention, your true desire, and your higher being. Because what happens is as you get to know someone better, you get to know them even their deeper parts. Most of us ignore ourselves unless we have been trained to become our best friend and most intimate partner. Many of us look for fulfillment through our sexual drive that makes us find a mate. And then we kind of also, because of all the romantic literature, all the romantic movies, all the culture around coupling, which is beautiful, but is also primarily aimed at reproduction. So it's a natural mechanism in the universe. But we invest a lot of our expectation in becoming happy through just the right partner. That's until we find out that they're not just the right partner, because the right perfect partner doesn't exist. Just like we are not the perfect partner for someone else, well, they cannot be the perfect partner for us because we are what we are. And we are not only imperfect, but fundamentally, we will never be able to find full completion just through something out there that is someone else. We can find contentment in our relationship with ourselves. And the trick is that when you're good with yourself, you don't care if someone around you is perfect or not. It stops becoming an issue because you know that as when you learn to master your own thoughts, your own emotions, your own body, you become the source of your satisfaction, and you can make the best of every circumstance in your life, including relationships with people who are as imperfect as you are. And in their imperfection, they are also perfect and beautiful, because that's the beauty of humanity. But then when these words don't remain words and they actually become your experience, and you can actually really experience being content and not angry, not frustrated, not sad, not bewildered, upset, frustrated by anything happening in your life, because you learn to focus on that center of contentment and joy that is in your heart, then that's inner communication. Then naturally everything else will take on a different hue.